Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sir, ready?
One good move makes all the difference. The best way to predict future is to create it. Take a move. Create a future. Join Shobit University.
As a young citizen of India, armed with technology, knowledge, and love for my nation, with a vision of transforming India into a developed nation, I am joining Shobit University. What about you?
Yes, Ritu, please.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I, Ritu Sharma, Assistant Professor, School of Liberal Arts and Languages, welcomes you all in today's co-learning webinar series. As you all know that the School of Liberal Arts and Languages is organizing a webinar on amazing secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God, often referred to as the Gita, is a 701 verse Hindu scripture that is part of the epic Mahabharata, dated to the 2nd century BCE. It is considered to be the one of the main holy scriptures for Hinduism, the world's oldest and the third largest religion. The Gita is set in a narrative framework of a dialogue between Pandava prince Arjuna and his guide Krishna, an avatar of Lord Vishnu. Today, we know about the amazing secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, I would like to request Registrar Shobit University Government Professor Mahipal Singh sir to share some valuable words with us.
Thank you. Ritu Sharma. I am audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Thank you, Ritu Sharma and Dr. Gunjan Agarwal ma'am. And today, speaker Sri Viswanathan ji. First of all, I should congratulate School of the Liberal Arts for organizing this web series and so many that already that sessions already conducted. All these sessions are very useful to all the students and staff members. And today's topic, amazing secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. Really, Gita is the secret of everything. और मैं तो सिर्फ एक ही लाइन जानता हूँ गीता की कि कर्म कर फल की इच्छा मत कर. Do your duty, don't have any expectations. And I add one sentence after that. If you have expectations, it will give the frustration. So if we keep this thing in our mind, certainly all the worries will be there out. But today we are very hopeful, and I am very eager to listen from the today's speaker, Viswanathan sir. Thank you very much, and it will be a blessing to all of us. Ritu, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, and give your valuable time for us for this webinar series, sir. Thank you. Now, I would like to request Dean, School of Liberal Arts and Languages, Dr. Gunjan Agarwal ma'am, to welcome respected speaker and participants. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you very much. So, respected Registrar sir, respected speaker of the session, Mr. Ed Vishwanathan ji, my worthy colleagues and dear participants, good afternoon. This is my pride, privilege and pleasure to welcome you all to this platform of co-learning webinar series. Shobit University has been ranked in top 22 technical universities in India imparting quality education. Empowering nation through education is the vision of the university. School of Liberal Arts and Languages is offering UG and PG courses with PhD in English. Emily Dickinson wrote, "Hope is a thing with feathers." And if I apply this quote in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, this is quite applicable, and Gita has many more dimensions. Even life is incomplete if we don't try to understand this holy book. Even a single sentence can change a life and leads one towards betterment and happiness. According to Professor Praful Kumar Mishra sir, Chancellor Dr. Rajendra Prasad Central Agricultural University, Pusa, Samastipur, Bihar, and a renowned scholar and academician, The Bhagavad Gita is a song of life. Many more numberless interpretations are available. So I can sum up the theme. Life is nothing without this beautiful, exquisite saga of love, life, and humanity. It binds people with one another, irrespective of their caste, creed, culture, and color. This is just an outline, and Sir will throw light in detail. He will disclose all the amazing secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, it is an honor for me to introduce our honorable speaker, Sir Ed Vishwanathan ji. Mr. Ed Vishwanathan is a retired electrical engineer who lives in the United States of America. We are especially lucky to have Vishwanathan ji here with us this evening. He is the author of 3 international bestsellers about Hinduism. Am I Hindu? Second is Amazing Secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. And the third one is Amazing Secrets of Hinduism, Hindu Culture and Incredible India. His book, Am I Hindu?, was written 30 years ago and published to educate his son who was attending a Catholic school at that time in question and answer format on his Hindu culture and heritage. Am I a Hindu? Was on Amazon 10 bestseller books about Hinduism years back, and the book received rave reviews from the Hindu Chennai, Hinduism Today magazine, India West magazine, California, India Tribune magazine, Chicago, etc. In USA, Library Journal and Booklist magazines recommend this book for all private and public libraries. This book is praised by Mr. Walter Isaacson, ex-chief editor of Time magazine, as well as by Dr. Stephen Prothero, chairman of Religious Studies, Boston University. This book is used at Boston University and many other universities in USA and Canada, has also been translated in different languages. So here is Mr. Vishwanathan to talk about the amazing secrets of the Bhagavad Gita. So let us please welcome Mr. Ed Vishwanathan ji. So please start your presentation. Please, sir.
Hold on. Oh my God, I am getting lost. How will I go back to the main screen? I can't go back to the main screen.
Sir, if you click on Maximize, then you can go back to your main screen.
What do you click?
Sir, you are visible, you are quite audible, and if you want to share your
now
slides,
you can share your screen again.
Hanji, you can share your screen again.
Sir, just click on the presentation first, then click on this.
Okay. Hold on. I'm so sorry. Okay, now let me see. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, sir. No problem. No issues, sir. Please.
No. Okay. Can you see me now?
Yes, sir. You are visible, sir.
I apologize for the thing.
No, no, sir. It's okay. Please carry on.
Let me start with a prayer. Soma Satkamaya Pramukti Soma Udit Samaya Satyoma Satkamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This prayer, which came from Brihad Aranya Upanishad, is an extremely important prayer, and it is even prayed during the meeting of the US Congress a few years ago. This is a universal prayer applicable to everybody. Lead me from unreal to real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Before I start, I want to thank Dr. Kunjan Agarwal, who took with so much patience, she dealt with me and made this happen. Dr. Ritu Sharma and the Shobit University and everybody associated with the university, giving me the chance and privilege to participate in this discussion. As you may know, I am an engineer, not a guru or theologian. It is out of my interest. I studied all the scriptures thanks to my late mom, and who taught me many scriptures. When I was growing up about 76 years ago, we don't even have a radio at home. So naturally, a child is always studying all the time. Book. This is my first book, Daddy Am I Hindu, just like Dr. Agarwal said. I wrote this book because I wanted to educate my son who was attending a Catholic school that time. So this book came from my heart and not from my head. That may be a reason why it became a darling of millions around the world. Then in 1922, this book had so much publicity around the world. So an American publisher told me that we better drop Daddy out of the book's name so that American universities will carry it. So I rewrote the book as Am I Hindu? It's a lively discussion between every aspect of Hinduism between a 14-year-old American-born Indian son and his middle-aged father in 90 chapters. The son, because he's born and raised in the United States, asking very, very tough questions. Normally, a child in India will not ask such questions, but in this book, the child is slowly argues. Then this book was translated to Hindi. Then it was translated to Indonesia. In Indonesia, they translated the book. Then 2015, I wrote a book about the Bhagavad Gita, as Dr. Agarwal said. It is an amazing secret of Bhagavad Gita. It is a thought-provoking discussion book. Every aspect of in 63 chapters between a grandfather and his 18-year-old American-born grandson. Because the grandson is born and raised in the United States, his questions are tough. His points are pointed. It's not like an Indian child asking questions. He's asking very tough questions in this book. He even asked why Lord Krishna had to say about the way the woman was introduced in one question. So I don't want to go details about it now, but everything was very thoroughly discussed in this book. Because there was so much interest in this book, I made an American publisher to publish the US edition with one different cover, an Indian edition with a different cover, even though data in both the books are same. Then in 2018, I published this book, Amazing Secrets of Hinduism. It's about the great Hindu kings like Guptas, Cholas, Maurya, Ashoka, Harshas, and Vijayaraja Empire. All these things I wrote also about the great Hindu scientists like Aryabhatta and all those people. See, people love to read my books, not because I am an expert in Sanskrit or anything like that. They are written in very simple English, question and answer format, very little Sanskrit words respecting all religions, lot of charts, no fanatical statement backed by scriptures. I have to give a brief introduction of Hinduism because many kids do not know this. The name of our Hinduism is Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is a Sanskrit word which means that which is anadi, meaning eternal law. It was Persians who came to India during 6th century BCE who gave the name Hinduism, meaning religion of people living near the Indus River. In Persian, the letter H and S are pronounced almost the same. So they mistook the word Sindhu to H and they start calling Hindus and Hinduism. By the way, there is no Aryan invasion because the whole thing of Aryan invasion is a myth. And I met David Frawley in 1992 in Edison, New Jersey, because we both were invited guests to speak to the kids in the Babs India Festival and Edison, New Jersey. And there the first person who told me that the whole Aryan invasion is a myth, and then later he published a book, The Myth of Aryan Invasion. Again, I want to also bring to the point, only India is called Aryavarta. If these Aryans came from Germany or Iran or somewhere else, those countries should have been called also Aryavarta. Only Indian scriptures repeat the words Aryans again and again. Believe it or not, there are no words like Hindu or Hinduism, Hindu scripture. Anglo-Hindu law. Words like Hindu and Hinduism stuck after the British Governor General Hastings enforced Anglo-Hindu law to rule Hindus in India. Everyone is attracted to Hinduism since Hinduism allows free expression of thoughts and actions. Even an atheist has the right to condemn Hinduism in public and still proudly say, I am a Hindu. Who are rishis? Rishis were scientists of the ancient age. They discussed and debated like every aspect of life. They even discussed at length about human sexuality. We the only people who have Kama Sutra, nobody else. They explored the universe. They even allowed atheist philosophy to be reason. They never beat up or killed people who disagreed with them. India is the cradle of civilization, and women are indeed the backbone of our achievements. Women are allowed to marry men of the choice through Swayamvara, as well as entering relationship in Gandharva Vivaha. Like Vishwamitra and Menaka had a Gandharva Vivaha and had daughter Shakuntala. Many great women like Sati, Sita, Kundi, Panjali, Damayanti chose their husband through Swayamvara. Sati got into trouble with his king Daksha, her father, because Sati chose to marry Lord Shiva and Daksha didn't like it. Girls were married only after attaining the age of maturity. During Vedic times, women were treated as equal. Women seers in Vedas are called Rishikas. Some of the great women thinkers and writers during Vedic age are Gargi, Maitreyi, Kaushalya, Siddhartha, Apala, and Raghunandra. According to Brihadaranyaka, King Janaka had a meeting. In that function, Gargi debated Rishi Yajnavalkya about the origin of existence. Now I am going to briefly go through about the Hindu scriptures to get an idea. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of Hindu scriptures. Our scriptures started as Shruti and Smriti, broadly. According to Hindu scripture, knowledge always exists in the form of sounds in the universe. Thus, knowledge started as Shruti. The Rishi of ancient times who perfected themselves had this eternal truth, and they taught the truth to disciple by telepathy, and later disciple wrote in books. Shruti, that which is heard scriptures are Vedas and Upanishads. Smriti, that which is remembered is rest of the scriptures. I am just going to briefly go through it. I cannot have time to read all this. So we have 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda, and each of them have 4 parts: Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishads. There are 108 Upanishads, but Adi Shankara wrote about 10 of them. Only after Adi Shankara wrote about them, people gave so much importance to Upanishads. Upanishads are the brains of Hinduism, because Vedas will have so many things, but Upanishads are completely about Brahman and Atma. Then look at it. Unlike other religions, we have Vedangas, and out of which Dharma Sutra is where we have the codes to rule, like Manusmriti, Gaudavasmriti, Yajnavalkya-smriti. Some of the Smritis have written all the rules and regulations for us. We don't have a 10 commandments, but these code books tell us how to live proper life. Then we have darshanas. That's Hindu philosophy. There are 6 darshanas. Then we have 2 itihasa, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and Bhagavad Gita comes as a middle of the Mahabharata. Then look at it. Then we have Charvaka atheist philosophy. When the rest of the world burn and kill people disagreeing what a church or mosque taught, Hinduism we allowed and supported atheistic philosophy. Charvaka atheist philosophy preach all things are made of earth, air, fire, and water. That which cannot be perceived does not exist. Heaven and earth are nothing but inventions. The only goal of humans is to enjoy pleasure and avoid pain. Vedas are written by buffoons. Charvaka died in bed. Nobody killed him. That makes Hinduism very spiritual. Now come to Bhagavad Gita. I'm going very fast. There is no teacher like Lord Krishna ever walked upon this earth, and there is no book like Bhagavad Gita on planet Earth. I am not talking this fanatically. I am talking because I have researched through Bhagavad Gita more than 55 years, and I couldn't find a book dealing with so many subjects in one small little book with 700 verses. That's why it made him. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of atom bomb, he studied Bhagavad Gita when he was doing Manhattan Project in New York to create the first atom bomb. And he quoted a verse from Bhagavad Gita when the first atom bomb was detonated on July 16, 1945 in the Trinity Church in New Mexico, in which he quoted the verse, Lord Krishna saying, I am death, the mighty destroyer of the worlds. I have come to destroy this people. Even without you taking part, Arjuna, all these soldiers of opposing army will be slain. So it is very difficult not to fall in love with Bhagavad Gita. See, Bhagavad Gita appears in the middle of the Mahabharata, the Bhishma Parva. It has 700 verses and 18 chapters. It is a dialogue with its warrior Arjuna and Lord Krishna in the middle of battlefield, which Mahabharata, which lasted 18 days. Mahabharata epic was written by Rishi Vedavyasa It is the longest poem in the world with 220,000 verses. It is lengthier than Homer's Odyssey. Gita Yajna. Everybody, before any theologian, guru or something, start talking about Bhagavad Gita. First they will do is a Gita Dhyana. Gita Dhyana was written, which is start with Om Parthaya Pratibodhidam. It was written by Madhusudan Saraswati, a great saint born in Bengal during 1940. Everybody asked the question, how this Mahabharata book came to existence. According to legend, Saint Narada insisted that Rishi Vedavyasa, who has written many wonderful books like Vedanta, Vedanta Sutra, and so many other books, he should write a book, a Mahabharata epic, to help common man to understand subtle truth of the universe. Then Vedavyasa said, that is well and good, but I can only transcribe, somebody has to write it down. So Narada suggested Ganesh. So Rishi Vedavyasa sought the help of Lord Ganesh. He was a very reluctant writer. Ganesh said, I will write, but the moment you stop reciting, I will stop writing forever. Vedavyasa said, okay, agree to your terms, provided you fully understand the meaning of everything I am saying before you write. So after that, they wrote the Mahabharata. According to some Bhagavad Gita was strictly as a devotional book for people who worship Lord Krishna. That is not true. If you recite through 700 verses the Bhagavad Gita like I did, you will be amazed to find out that Bhagavad Gita is written to educate everyone about the unwritten truth of the universe. Lord Krishna mentioned about devotion only in the later parts of the Bhagavad Gita. And again, you have to know we have 4 paths to attain spiritual maturity and self-realization. So it is not necessary for someone to follow Bhakti Yoga. We can choose any of them. We can choose Jnana Yoga, which is meditation and contemplation, with Karma Yoga, which is selfless thoughts and action, Raj Yoga, breathing and pranayama, Bhakti Yoga, total surrender to God. I firmly believe Bhagavad Gita should be read and studied subject-wise, because Lord Krishna is discussing more than 50 subjects in the Bhagavad Gita. These are the subjects I give concentrated on my book, like Sankhya philosophy, Nishkama karma, Atman, Varna system, Maya. The Varna system is not caste system. Yoga, upside down tree, the food, the best and worst time to die, food and fasting, and gunas, etc. That's the reason why I published Bhagavad Gita, Amazing Secret Bhagavad Gita. Because Krishna is discussing at least 50 subjects. So each subject I put in a different chapter so that people have a bird's eye view of what is Krishna is talking about. For example, he discussed Sankhya philosophy from Bhagavad Gita from chapter 2, verse 39 onwards to many verses in all other chapters. That is the reason why I wrote this particular book. For example, look at the way it is discussed. Vedavyasa very cleverly brought this scenario. Vedavyasa didn't write, hello, these are the truth of the universe. Nobody will read it. Instead of, he made a discussion between the first person Krishna to the second person Arjuna, Prince Arjuna, seen and heard telepathically by third person Sanjaya, advisor and chariot of King Dasrata, telling the fourth person blind King Dasrata. Who is this blind King Dasrata? You and I. We are completely ignorant of the truth. So Krishna, Vedavyasa is talking us through Krishna, the truth of the universe. The Mahabharata has more than 200 actors. I'm saying actors because looking at an epic. And if you look at it, start with Rishi Parashara having a relation with Satyavati and having son Rishi Vedavyasa. And the Kuru dynasty, the king Shantanu marries Ganges and a son named Bhishma. And then he later marries Satyavati, who had two sons, Vichitravirya, Chitrangada. And then suddenly both the sons died. So Satyavati asked Rishi Vedavyasa to impregnate the princesses Ambika and Ambalika, and also a maid. And the maid gave birth to Vidura and Ambika, Datrasha, Ambalika, Pandu. Then Datrasha married Gandhari from Gandhara in Afghanistan and had 100 sons and Dushala. And Pandu had Madri, gave birth to Nagula and Sahadeva. And Kundi had a previous, before getting married, he had a son named Karna, then they had Yudhishthira, Bhimasena, Arjuna. Draupadi married 5 Pandavas. Bhimasena married a girl in Hidimbi and had a Gadolkaja. Arjuna married Subhadra, and Arjuna had a son Abhimanyu, married Uttara and had a Parishit, Janamendriya. After that, the Pandavas' kingdom just is gone because Kali Yuga started that time. These are the chapters. I'm not going to read the chapters with time. Chapters in Bhagavad Gita is known as yogas. Arjuna Vishada Yoga means not there is any yoga made Arjuna Vishada. It is only meant Arjuna's grief. To me, Mahabharata war was not a bloody war, relatives killing relatives. Instead, it is a symbolic war between right and wrong. Arjuna symbolized Jivatman, or immortal soul within the body. Krishna, God of Paramatman. Kurukshetra symbolized field of action. 5 horses symbolize 5 sense organs. Pandava symbolizes positive spiritual thoughts. Kauravas symbolize negative destructive thoughts. This is the most important part of the Bhagavad Gita. You may ask why I am saying this. See, as soon as Arjuna entered the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna asked Krishna to put the chariot between opposing armies. In the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna saw the mighty Kaurava army along with Lord Krishna's army assembled against him, including his own relatives, teachers, and friends. He saw Bhishma with all kinds of weapons, Karna with Pashupada Nagastra, Drona with Brahmastra, Krupa, Shalya, all these warriors assembled to fight him. Suddenly, overcome with self-doubt and confusion, he told Krishna, I don't want to fight. He said, Krishna, the actual words I will tell you in few seconds. Krishna, my mouth is becoming dry, my body trembles, my hair stand on end, my bow Gandiva slipped from my hand, my skin intensely burns. My head turns, I am unable to stand steady. Oh Krishna, I see bad omens. Please, 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 please help me. That is the reason why the first chapter is Ashtanga Vishada Yoga. Lord Krishna immediately knows his great friend has become a serious mental case. He cannot act. He don't know what to do. He is totally lost. He is not acting like a fighter, but he is almost acting like a baby. That's the reason why Lord Krishna acted like a psychologist throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's major problem was his ego. Even though gods and gods, Lord Krishna stood next to him, Arjuna's ego always took charge of him. Humility was not a word in Arjuna's dictionary. What happened to Arjuna? At the end of Mahabharata, After Lord Krishna left for Vaikuntha, Rishi Vedavyasa has to come down and teach a very disheartened Arjuna the whole Bhagavad Gita idea. So I am going to go through some of the chapters I dealt with in my book. Sankhya philosophy. After 60 years of research, I conclude Rishabhyasa wrote Bhagavad Gita based on Sankhya philosophy. The most puzzling part of Bhagavad Gita is Rishi Veda's repeated mention of Sankhya in 18 chapters, starting verse 239, even though he is the founder of Vedanta philosophy. We have 6 philosophies, but Rishi Vedavyasa only mentions Sankhya, Vedanta, and Yoga philosophy in Bhagavad Gita. These are the 6 philosophies. I am not going to go read the whole thing. There are 6 philosophies are called darshanas, meaning seeing or understanding in Sanskrit language. The Sankhya, which was founded by Rishi Kapila, it is talking to ultimate relatives of Purusha and Prakriti, and they are governed by gunas. Then Yoga, Jnana, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, and Vedanta. And Bhagavad Gita starts with Sankhya philosophy. Arjuna, I have spoken to you about the wisdom of Sankhya philosophy so far. Now please listen to the wisdom of karma, the path of selfless action, the path of freedom from all bondage. What is Sankhya? I will briefly go through it. Sankhya does not accept the idea of absolute principle of God behind creation. By the way, even though it is written Sankhya Yoga, the 2nd chapter, there is no yoga named Sankhya. So only thing is that Sankhya Yoga means the chapter of Sankhya philosophy. For Sankhya, the existence of God is not relevant at all. According to Sankhya philosophy, there are 2 independent realities in the world, Purusha, the energy, and Prakriti. According to Sankhya, all matter, including ourselves, are governed by 3 gunas. And these 3 gunas are Sattva guna, spiritual, Rajoguna, worldly, Tamo guna, inertia. Lord Krishna indirectly said, this is chapter 9, verse 7, he said, from Purusha manifests or creates Prakriti matter. And at the end, Prakriti matter merges back into Purusha. This is exactly the big bounds theory, which proposes the universe will pass through phases of expansion. Now we are expanding, we are in a big bang mode. And then after that, after another millions of years later, it will start contraction. It will contract in such a way, it will create millions of black holes that all the matter will be sucked into it. And this is what is the modern theory is saying. This is exactly a repeat of what Sankhya is saying. That is the beauty of it. Here is the brief chart of Sankhya for people to research further. First come Purusha, then from Prakriti, then come Mahat, then come Ahangara. Ahangara is the most important part of Sankhya because the minute we get to Ahangara, we are in trouble. All our problems are Ahangara. I can say a million things, I am humble, humble, humble. I cannot be because every time I say I am becoming ego. It's very difficult to get rid of ego. Only persons like Ramana Maharshi or Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Mirabai or Kabir Das or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could get rid of ego. 99.99% people cannot get rid of ego. Ego is the biggest problem. See, that is stuck right here. From that gunas, the tendency of mind. Then the manas go to Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, Tantrendriya, Panchabhuta. Next one is Krishna talk about selfless act. Krishna knew that Arjuna cannot follow Jnana Yoga because Arjuna is so much, he's so egoistic No way he can follow. So Krishna said, let me talk to him about Karma Yoga. Then of the chapter 2 to another 171 verses, Krishna gives Arjuna a detailed course about Karma Yoga. I am just giving you a brief summary of it, a bird's eye view of Krishna's life. Krishna said, Arjuna, one cannot attain freedom from karma by merely staying away from karma. Because one does not become tranquil by merely giving up karma. Nobody can remain passive even for a moment. Everyone is helplessly drawn into karma by inborn and natural impulses. Swami Vivekananda said, even breathing is karma. So anyone who says, I am retired, or I don't have to do anything, making a fool of himself or herself. One who sits idle, Krishna said again, one who sits idle, restraining from karma, yet mentally broods over sensual pleasure, is a hypocrite who has fooled himself. Just suddenly saying, I am going to become a sannyasi, you cannot become a sannyasi. Are you kidding? If things were so easy, Arjuna would have left the war and become a sannyasi. You can't. It takes a lot of mental conviction to suddenly give up material pleasures. Lord Krishna said, selfless action is the best way to avoid karmic debt. Krishna said, you have the right to act. At the same, you do not have the right for the fruits of action. You should not act motivated by the fruits of action, also never be inactive anytime. And here again he says, Arjuna, I have nothing to do in the three worlds and nothing to gain in three worlds. Still I am always doing my I am always engaged in action. Lord Krishna, Lord Buddha, as well as Jesus Christ are telling us that we should do things without looking for any compliments or rewards. In the Holy Bible, Jesus said, but when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Bill Gates, he is a karma yogi. For all the people we know nowadays, Bill Gates stands out. He had acquired billions. He is the richest man in this world. But he is so humble and he gives lots of money to take care of especially many countries in Africa and other parts of the world. Why bad things happen to good people? This is the common question I get. Krishna is saying God is not responsible what you think or do. You alone are responsible. He said, God is not responsible for anyone's sinful activities or pious activities. People are mistaken about this since their knowledge is covered by ignorance. He also said, God does not interfere with the free will of human beings. Krishna did not interfere with Arjuna's free will. Arjuna had the right to accept everything Krishna taught. He also has the equal rights to disagree and does not accept anything Krishna taught. So Krishna is saying, God does not decide karma each one of us do, nor he induces people to act, nor does he create fruits of any action. Each person according to his vasanas do all the action, not God, immortal soul. This is one of the most important parts of Bhagavad Gita as well as of Hinduism. Because everything is based on the soul is immortal. Namaste greeting came from the immortality of the soul. What Namaste concept is saying, Namaste concept originates from the firm belief the soul is immortal Atman, and is indeed God, and as such everybody we meet are the exact mirror image of ourselves. What is Atman? Hindu scriptures that our body is perishable and temporary. The soul within the body is immortal. Immortal soul within the body is known as Atman, as well as in the Dvaita philosophy, this Atman is known as Jivatman and God is known Paramatma. See, comparing Hindu salvation concept, the salvation concept, Christianity, Judaism, like comparing apples and oranges. So in Hinduism, firmly believe in the immortality of soul, whereas Christianity, Judaism, or Islam does not believe the soul is immortal. This is the way the whole body is set up. Long before the birth of medical science, rishis known that the human body consists of 5 layers called kosha, ranging from dense physical body to the most subtle levels of emotions, mind and spirit. Like Annamaya kosha, then Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha, and then Atman. These 5 sheaths are independent of Atman. Hindu temples are constructed to represent the 5 koshas of human body, with the place we place the deity is called Garbhagraha. Krishna said, Arjuna, the soul that dwells in the body of all beings is eternal and indestructible. Therefore, you should not grieve for anybody when they die. Krishna is telling us, you are not the body with a soul. You are a soul with a body. As far as the immortal soul is concerned, there is neither birth nor death at any time. Immortal soul is neither born nor does it die, nor cease to exist. Birth and death and reincarnation. These 3 subjects, Krishna has dealt with through a lot of verses in the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna, according to Krishna, what happens when we die? According to Bhagavad Gita and according to all Hindu scriptures, the body alone dies. The immortal soul within the body never dies. But the path the soul takes is decided upon the past actions done in the former body, which are known as karmas or karmic death. After death, according to the karmic death, soul ends up in heaven or hell. After a short stay, either of those places, the soul will take a body again. Past karmic debt are attached to the soul, and they decide what kind of body the soul takes next life. When an individual soul exhausts all its karmic debt, then the person attains salvation and self-realization. Hindu salvation concepts are logical, and you do not be Hindu to attain salvation. Krishna said to Arjuna, Arjuna, birth and death are part and parcel of life. If one is born, one has to die one day. Nobody escaped from the cause of death. Then he continues, just as a person put new garments after giving up old ones, similarly the soul secures new bodies after giving up old bodies. We have always, I have seen Hindus say that RIP, when rest in peace. That is associated with Christianity, and a Hindu should only say Atma Shanti, meaning praying for the soul to attain moksha or mukti or salvation and never take birth again. So next time when somebody dies, just say, I am praying for Atma Shanti, for your friend or your friend's mother or father. Don't say RIP. That doesn't make any sense. Varna system, not caste system. Krishna dealt in very detail about Varna system, not about caste system. The difference between Varna system and caste system is that Varna system is based on character of a person. Caste is based on birth. Varna system, you change occupation and you change your Varna. Caste system, no, you can't. Changing one caste is impossible. There are no restrictions in Varna system. Caste system has restrictions. Varna system is flexible. Caste system is very rigid. Varna system, again, I had to say a million times, not caste system, started during the Rigvedic time for the proper division of labor. Purusha in the Rig Veda is a cosmic man with 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, and 1,000 feet. Purusha Sukta states, the Brahmins were made from Purusha's mouth, the Kshatriyas from his arm, the Vaishyas from his thighs, and the Shudras from his feet. There is no word caste in Hindu scripture. The English word caste derived from the Spanish and Portuguese word casta. Lord Krishna said, according to people's born aptitudes and professional interested, I create the 4 divisions called Varna system of human society. Even though I am the author of the Varna system, what should know I do nothing in am eternal. In the epic of Mahabharata, there is a discussion with Yasha and Dharmaputra. And Yasha tells Dharmaputra, a man does not become a Brahmin by mere fact of his birth, not by the acquisition of Vedic scholarship. It is a good character alone that can make one a Brahmin. He'll be worse than a Shudra if he conduct is not in conformity the rule of good behavior. Krishna continues, a learned man and enlightened person sees with equal vision a learned Brahmin, an outcast, a crow, an elephant, or a dog. This is the chart. Again, this is the Varna system chart. The Lord Brahma created all beings. The Lord Brahma came from the umbilical cord of Lord Vishnu in a lotus. Then Vishnu said to Brahma, please start creation. So he created everything. His first son was Manu. He also had 12 Prajapatis, which came from his head. And the last one was Daksha Prajapati that came from his thumb. Anyway, then the Manu, from Manu, whole human started human being. It's just like in the Bible, all human beings started with Adam and Eve. And then he has Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. They were called twice born or Duja community. And Brahmins also had Gotra Kula, the Rishi community. And there are 15 Gotra Kulas starting from Agastya to Vishwamitra. And the Shudras were workers, but there is no mention of untouchables anywhere in any of our scriptures. I agree, caste system is still a cancer in India and in Hinduism. India's caste system was officially abolished during 1950, but it is still going on. Until every Dalit boy or a girl can proudly say, I'm a Hindu, India or Hinduism is not free. See, in the Bible, there contain many verses reference to slavery. St. Paul asked one slave, Onesimus, to go back to his master Philomena. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederate States of America, quoted the Bible to support slavery. He said slavery was established by decree of Almighty God. It's sanctioned in the Bible in both testaments and from Genesis to Revelation. So it is such a sad feeling I have that even though there is no mention of caste system in our scriptures, we are still following caste system. It has to stop. The government in India should not allow caste to be mentioned in any of its documents. The sin. No Hindu will ever say I am a sinner. Sin actually means ignorance in Hinduism. Sin is the false belief that one is the spiritual body and jnana eradicate ignorance. Lord Krishna said, even if you are the worst sinner in the world, you can still cross the ocean of sin by a bark of wisdom. He continued, as the blazing fire burns wood to ashes, Arjuna, so does the fire of true knowledge to burn all karmic death to ashes. You may ask, how did the sin concept originate? It came from the Adam and Eve story. Adam and Eve was told not to eat the forbidden fruit, the tree of good and evil. They ate, and then they had original sin. Even though Judaism, Islam, and Christianity are closely connected, only Christians believe in the original sin. Others do not. Jesus never spoke about the original sin. The Christian believe that all of us are born with original sin, and only through Jesus we can deal with our sin and salvation. Heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are not important in Hinduism. As far as Lord Krishna is concerned, heaven and hell are temporary abodes where the immortal soul resides for a very short period of time and come back to earth again to take another body in order to exhaust all karmic debt and attain salvation. Salvation. What is salvation according to Hinduism? Salvation means realizing one is the immortal soul or Atman within the body and giving up the false belief that one is a perishable body. That is the reason why Hindu salvation is known as self-realization. That means realizing that one is indeed the self or Atman, the immortal soul within the body. Hindu salvation is also known as moksha or mukti, meaning the liberation or release from the repeated cycles of birth and death known as samsara. Arjuna asked a very tough question to Krishna. What happened to a person? This is an excellent question. See, what happened to a person who dies at the end, deviate from spiritual pursuit, and indulge in all kinds of material pleasures? Krishna says that man will never perish. He will be reborn into a family of pure, pious people after living many years in heaven and continue the spiritual quest where he left off in his last life. So this idea of somebody losing their salvation is never mentioned in Hindu scripture. A Hindu, once you are in a spiritual ladder, you will not fall off. Only place you go is climb up. And Hindu scripture states salvation is for all, irrespective of one is Hindu or not. Even atheists will have salvation. Only the time factor varies. The best will achieve salvation with one life. The worst will achieve through many lives. Nobody is lost forever in Hinduism. Nobody rot in hell in Hinduism. Thoughts and mind. Krishna gave utmost importance to mind and thought throughout the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna asked a very tough question. Oh Krishna, since the mind is unsteady and turbulent, obstinate and very strong, controlling the mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. Krishna said, Arjuna, the mind is restless and very difficult to control, but mind can be controlled by constant practice and by detachment. He further details about there are so many verses. I took 3 of the most important verses. Those who have controlled the mind is a friend. But those who have no control of the mind acts like an enemy. He continues. One who can control the mind and attain tranquility, to that man, heat and cold, pleasure and pain, honor and dishonor are the same. He continues again. Whenever the mind goes unsteady, wanders, one must withdraw it back and keep it under the control of the self. See, we, thousands of years ago, we just broke this mind so well. Our rishis, the great scientists of ancient days, said, Jagrati is a waking state of mind, Swapna the dream state, Sushupti is the deep sleep state, and Turiya is the state beyond mind. When you go deeper and deeper into spirituality, you will enter into Turiya state. When someone enters the Turiya state, everything becomes one. The person will transcend duality, feeling of hot and cold, happiness and unhappiness. See, that is the state Krishna calls Sthita Prajna. Anybody who reaches the Sthita Prajna state, they will live in this world, but the whole life is out of this world. They may go through all the things we do, but they are in a different world altogether. Turiya is repeated as an amrita in an immeasurable, measureless, and multiplications, being synonymous to samadhi in yoga terminology. Krishna is telling so many things to Arjuna. That is the beauty of it. He's trying every way, just like a psychologist. Okay, let us try this. Krishna said to Arjuna, Arjuna, why don't you become a yogi? See, from the time memorial, the rishis know that breathing, thoughts, and mind are very closely connected. Rishi know that breath is a very powerful tool to calm the mind. They so knew whatever we think we become. When we get angry, when we become emotional, whenever we become sad, we have to watch your breathing pattern. It will be erratic, short, and rapid. But when we are happy and have sublime, for example, when you go to the temple, watch your breath. It will be slow and relaxed. And your mental activity will slow down. You will say, I am feeling so happy. Actually, indirectly, what is happening to you, your breathing is long and sinusoidal, and that's the reason why you are happy. Yoga and deep breathing exercise are true answer the coronavirus anxiety and stress. Yoga came from Hinduism, but it is not religious. Yoga is a science like physics or chemistry. The world needs yoga more than ever. If you look at this, in the latest article, March 16, 2020, Harvard Medical School recommends yoga. This is an American college is saying, and they also teaching controlled breathing. I was surprised to go through the whole step of controlled breathing to deal with coronavirus anxiety. Believe it or not, controlled breathing is Hindu pranayama, you know. Here Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna, a yogi lives like a lotus leaf. Raindrops falls on a lotus leaf, but lotus leaf is not affected by the raindrops. Similarly, a yogi lives in the world, but the yogi is unaffected by the world. That is the reason Lord Krishna said, Arjuna, try to become a yogi, please. He said, just as the ocean is unaffected by the waters of innumerable rivers flowing into it, a yogi is unaffected by the sensual pleasures due to the positive and negative reactions to the actions he or she does. And I am totally surprised. In the 9th chapter, Krishna starts saying to Arjuna, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Muttamam Pratishanavadam. To me, I couldn't believe in the chapter which was for devotion, Krishna said, Arjuna, this Rajavidya is a royal knowledge, it's a kingly secret. It is also the purest of all knowledge. It is directly perceivable, easy to practice, and imperishable. Krishna is...
Vishwanathan sir, sorry to interrupt you. Sir, actually there's a time limit, very sorry to say. If you permit, then we can ask some questions because some of the participants, they are very curious because we have to conclude the session. So if you permit, then can I take some questions or you can conclude the session within 5 minutes, please, sir.
Oh, I will finish in 5 minutes. Okay.
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. So please conclude the session within 5 minutes, please.
See, Lord Krishna delves further into it because I am surprised the way he is going on. See, he is talking about pranaya. Pranaya is the combination of two words. Prana means breath, ayama means suspension. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, Arjuna, some offer as a sacrifice the exhalation into inhalation, apana into prana, inhalation into exhalation, resulting in total stoppage of breathing. This is almost like a snake devouring itself through the tail. Amazing. See, what happens when you practice pranayama, you will stop breathing and indirectly you will stop thinking. The best way to meditate your anxiety is Hamsa or Soham method. Is watching exhalation without watch inhalation and exhalation without interrupting the flow pattern of air or chest or nostril movement. And Krishna also, the Patanjali also says, yoga means to operate the mental activity. This is about the avatars and Vishnu avatars, just said going through it. See, Buddha has nothing to do with Hinduism, but Jayadeva made Buddha is incarnation of Vishnu. And Jayadeva is the author for Gita Govinda. He is the person who made, he actually made Buddha, as well as he created Radha. There is Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana, Harivamsa Purana, Mahabharata does not mention Radha. Of course, there are reference to Radha in few other Puranas, which might have been composed on later days. I worship, then talk of what happened when we creation and annihilation of the universe, and then you sorry, I'm just going through the, and I will go with the last one. See, these are all things Krishna discussed in the thing. Let me go. Oh, this is the last one, most important one. I will finish with this. During the last chapter, Krishna said, I tried everything with Arjuna. Let me tell him that. Arjuna, even if you can't do anything, he said, Sarva Dharman Parityachya Mamega Charanam Bhuja. Arjuna, abandon all dharma duties and just surrender unto me. I shall not personally deliver you from all bonds of karma. Do not fear. And also this one is equally important. The last thing Krishna says, Sanjaya says, wherever there is Lord Krishna, the master of all yogas, and Artha Arjuna, there alone will be future. That means where there are persons who are spiritual in nature, always ready to act, there alone will be fortune, victory, well-being, righteousness. With that, you can ask me questions. So, please do. Hello?
Ritu ma'am, please ask, please. Or should I ask? Please.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for gracing the session and with your views and for enlightening us. I don't think so that we know all about all of huge things about the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, जो कि आज आपने बताया हम लोगों को. So firstly, I would like to take the question. The question number 1 is how the teachings of Gita influences corporate governance. Should the CEOs or top management follow the cardinal philosophy of Gita in running the day-to-day operations of their organizations?
Or whether we can use it in a day-to-day life? That's the question. Yes, of course. I mean, I work as an engineer, and many times I quoted Bhagavad Gita when I was doing. Once it so happened there was a major lawsuit against a realtor, and I want to help that person. Then I told her what Krishna said the day before the war. I said, Krishna said to Arjuna, Shatru Pakshatila Mitra Mandavena. We should make friends among enemies. And Krishna, that one I told him that Krishna said the day before he had to go and beat Bhishma and everybody and ask them how we can kill you. So I said that what we have to do in business. So there are so many places we can use Bhagavad Gita. For example, Krishna taught us you have to treat friend and foe alike in the Bhagavad Gita. And then, for example, Krishna said in the second chapter said, everything comes and goes, Arjuna, do not get attached. So take it as every day, because today's friend may become tomorrow's enemy. So those things can happen. Oh, go ahead. Now, what is the next question? So, go ahead. We can really use Bhagavad Gita in our day-to-day life. I found this we can, definitely. it's everything
Yes,
Krishna
sir.
taught.
We have,
Everything
yes,
Krishna
yes, sir,
taught.
yes, sir. We have manifest.
See, everything Krishna taught is not utopia. It is very clear-cut message. It's very applicable. That is the beauty of it. Please ask next question.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, do you ask something?
Okay, sir, within few words, I would just please reply. Actually, I have written so many questions. You can just, but today there is time limit. Next time, I would love to listen to you the whole presentation, but now I can take a question. Nishkam karma, selfless service, whether looking after one's fly needs can be termed as Nishkam karma. What do you think about it, sir?
Okay, number one, Nishkama karma is not easy. I know that. For example, when you are studying, you have to pass and you have to come excel in everything. When you are married and all, you have to take care of your wife or husband and children. So you have your duty bond to that ashrama. But my point is, still you can find time. For example, if you can go and check on your neighbor, if it's an elderly person, you can help them. Once in a while, you can go to the hospital and free. And there are charitable institutions like they could have Chimya machines or Ramasha machines or something, where you can offer your services. If you are a doctor, you can say, I will come and treat your patients free. And also, if you have anything extra in your house, you can freely give to people. So you can start in small doses, even though it is very difficult to do Nishkama karma when you yourself have a major problem of dealing with problems.
Very true, sir. Very true. Yeah.
So you can, very small doses you can do. For example, at least when you help somebody, don't mention it. And do not make them to come back to you, crawling to you, say thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't, just the word says, please don't mention means that is over. You go and do for somebody else.
Sir, thank you so much. Now it's time to wind up the session. Shrikant Gupta, sir, I will definitely send your question to sir. And I have so many questions, but later I promise you I would send your questions to Vishwanathan, sir. Sir, now this is the time. Actually, there's a time limit. I already told you. There are some urgent things. So now it is a matter of pleasure for me to acknowledge the contribution and blessings of all behind the curtain or backstage. And one of them is the sovereign Almighty God. So on behalf of Shobit family, I would like to thank our worthy honorable speaker, Shri Ed Vishwanathan sir, who has thrown light on different aspects of the Bhagavad Gita and revealed amazing mysteries and miraculous power of the shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita. I would like to listen to you again, sir, in future. And this was a wonderful session. And I just felt that I am sitting in a temple. So my body is also a temple. That was a quite pious session at all. I'm thankful to our respected registrar, sir, for his constant support and blessings. I'm grateful to you and all the participants, organizing team, including our highly dedicated technical team. Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Akhilesh ji. And with this prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhine, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kasya Dukbhag Bhaved. I conclude the session. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.